If Ohio State wins the national championship this coming year, I think that's going to open the door for a much bigger conversation. I think that might be an issue, right? When you talk about all of the money that they reportedly have spent to keep that roster together, no one actually knows, except for the people in the program, no one actually knows, hey, we gave Caleb Downs this much money. We got Judkins this much money. We got Will Howard this check. No one actually knows altogether what they actually spent. You see the reports about $10 million, $13 million, what it took for them to not only retain the roster that it had, but add all of the talent that it did in the portal. They're not the only team that added talent in the portal, right? Oregon, they went out and they got Dylan Gabriel and Evan Stewart. Georgia, they go out and they get Trevor Etienne and Kobe Young and Xavier McLeod. You see Ole Miss go out and get Walter Nolan. Look, these guys are getting money, right? The thing is, they've always gotten money, and cheating, quote-unquote cheating, it's not necessarily cheating anymore to make sure that these guys are getting paid. And the real issue is that the rules are a little bit unclear. But I'm worried that, hey, look, if Ohio State wins this year, and it was because of how stacked their roster was through the transfer portal, I just kind of think that opens up a new can of worms. I really do. A little bit different. College football teams are stacked. They win the national championship. Michigan was stacked this past year. Georgia's been stacked the last few years. 2019 LSU, 2020 Bama. Well, there are examples, right? I mean, LSU, Joe Burrow was a transfer guy, but more so like the way that the thing was happening. I just think that if in particular Ohio State is the one that don't get me wrong, look, Ohio State's a very good football team on paper. I expect them to be competing, right? I expect Georgia to be there towards the end. I expect Oregon, Texas. I expect these teams to be in the playoff. I expect the Buckeyes to be in the playoff. I don't necessarily expect Ohio State to win. If you told me that Ohio State won the national championship, I'm not going to be surprised, right? I firmly believe they're the second or third best team in college football. But when we talk about, hey, it costs all this money, is that going to set a precedent? Are other programs going to throw serious cash at a lot of these players and this thing just get worse? I don't know. I don't know. Like I was saying, to think that Trevor Etienne or any of the other guys that Georgia went after and got, didn't earn a little bit of a paycheck, and or even keeping Carson Beck, right? There was a little bit in there to keep Carson Beck. He's got options. If Carson wanted to leave, he could leave. If he wanted to go to the NFL, he'd go to the NFL. Hey, make it more enticing for me to stay, guys. Give me a couple million or whatever it is that Georgia ended up giving Carson Beck. Excuse me. I just think that it could set a bad precedent. Hey, you can buy a championship roster. You don't have to necessarily... Transfer recruiting is a part of the deal, yes. And like I've been saying, I think most people's real issue with this whole thing has been the free agency aspect of it. And what created the free agency aspect, I said it on a Riding Home video with Matt and Dean a few weeks ago. When you combine what NIL has meant and what the transfer portal has meant, you put those things together, it has created a free agency aspect to college football, which is not how it's worked. And I do think that the players should be allowed to earn money. Like, for example, Malachi Starks has Bose. He has a Gatorade sponsorship. He's got all these things. They're kind of more kept quiet with him. Malachi Starks should be allowed to do those things. Carson Beck, whoever it is, Quinn Ewers, Shedeur Sanders, they should be allowed to. That should have never been a rule, right? It's the university paying the athletes is what has always been kind of the hush-hush. No, don't do that. That's super, super illegal. The fact that the NIL aspect of it is great. It should have never been a problem in the first place. But it's also now a way that universities can just straight up, or boosters, or whoever it is that's actually collecting this money, can pay them. And it shows that Ohio State, that's already stacked, can go out and get all these players. Doesn't it kind of feel like this is a terrible example because Ohio State didn't win national championships recently, but they are one of the best teams in college football. It's like Kevin Durant going to the Warriors, an already stacked team, getting a superstar. That's what has happened in this transfer portal. And yes, you can make the argument about Isaiah Bond going to Texas and how that, but that's supplemental. The Buckeyes added people that they didn't even need. They just added on top. So I do think that if they win a national championship, does that show a precedent? Hey, okay, we just need to fork up the money. That's all it takes to have this roster, and we can win national championships. Part of me almost didn't even want to make this video. I just want to talk about this. Part of me didn't even want to make this video because I was like, okay, well, like, let's, don't kid yourself, Ryan. Like, these schools have been paying players for a long time, and having the players is the first thing that you need to win a national championship. You actually have to have good football players, right? I mean, how many teams, it just doesn't happen. Like, the worst national championship team of the last 15 years is who? Oh, Auburn? In 2010, right? Because they had a super cam, or what, Georgia fans aren't going to like me saying that, but he was a beast. I just think that it sets a bad precedent that this is what it's about. And you see, you get all the, especially older folks, oh, I'm not watching college football anymore, this and that. Look, the product, regardless, is still going to be really good. You're still going to, every Saturday, you're going to see good football, or at least most Saturdays. You're going to see good football. You're going to see good football players. This is the NFL pipeline. That's, unless these other leagues start taking over and high schoolers start going to them instead out of college football isn't going away. But the financial aspect of it, in terms of, it's just not fair. It's more like baseball, right? Where there aren't as many salary rules in like the NFL or the NBA where you get those caps, right? In baseball, if you can afford the players, then you can create that team. And that's kind of what college football is becoming a little bit. What's the counter argument to that, Ryan? Well, college football's never been fair. Why, getting rid of this would make that, and I'm not saying that this all needs to get rid of. I just think there needs to be some better regulations. But at the same time, it's like, how do I tell Quinshon Judkins that he can't go to Ohio State? What's the rule there? That's my real point. We're in the Wild West of football right now. But I just think it's turning into a little bit of a free agency. I don't know. Now, let's say it was Georgia that does it, and it comes out that Georgia spent $13 million or $15 million or $20 million to create its roster in NIL this year. People would be mad. Just as they point that out about Ohio State, people will get upset about it being Georgia. They would get upset about it being Texas or Bama or Florida or whoever it is. Maybe less upset about a team that hasn't been traditionally good. But it changes the aspect of college football, and the high school recruiting. The high school recruiting has changed drastically because of this. Now, in the living room, the conversation gears towards money. And that wasn't really what the conversation was necessarily about before. And now, in addition to, is this the right fit for me? Am I, how do I figure out a way on the field at this program? Is this a place that I can compete for national championships? Is this a place where I can compete for Heisman trophies and for NFL attention? Now it's, hey, do you want me as bad as Texas does? Texas is offering me $5 million. Do you want me $5 million bad, or do you only want me $2 million bad? What's the difference here, right? Part of this conversation is just the concept of, if Ohio State wins it, are we going to keep seeing that these teams buy players and hit up these guys and create super teams in terms of talented rosters on paper? And don't get me wrong, Georgia had a super team a couple years ago, right? When you think about that defense, but that would set the precedent for that. A little bit of a concern there. I don't know. This video was by no, and I'm sure people are going to take it like this. This video was by no means to call out Ohio State. They're playing within the flimsy rules right now, and that's okay. Georgia can do the same thing if it wants to do that, right? Georgia can fork up whatever it was that Caleb Downs wanted, right? He ended up ultimately going to Ohio State. Seems like he was going to go to Georgia at some point. They could have forked up the money, right? But at the end of the day, Kirby wants a team that fits, and you're not necessarily going to win the national championship just because your roster is more talented, just because it's more stacked. There are other factors that go into it. Newsletter is in the link below. Thanks for listening to my little concern about college football right now. and I will see you guys in the next video.